a Bible commentary on Matthew chapter 2. We're going to talk about the Magi following a star, King Herod's foolish jealousy, how throughout history Satan has killed children in his effort to try to thwart God's plans, and Joseph and Mary fleeing to Egypt. The text of Matthew chapter 2 is linked in the description below. If you've never read it before, I encourage you to go and read that first and then come back and watch this video. I find the story of the Magi traveling from the east all the way to Bethlehem to be fascinating. I mean, were they the only ones who could see this star? I mean, you would think the sight of a traveling star would bring out the whole of Jerusalem, saying, hey, look at that. But that's not what happened. The fact that the star, quote unquote, stood over the place where Jesus was makes me think that this was not some distant object in outer space twinkling in the night sky. No, I believe this was probably an angel, and they were describing it. Looking up into the sky, they were describing it looking like a star. And so the angel came and stood over the place where Jesus was. The King James, the ESV, and the NLT versions of the Bible describe these magi as wise men. However, it seems like, at least from our position of hindsight, that they were displaying a bit of naivety. Because the very first person that they sought out upon arriving in Jerusalem to inquire about the new king is the current king. Didn't they consider that King Herod might not be willing to give up his power to a new king, and he might be inclined to do harm to a political rival? The wise men came to King Herod wrongly assuming that he would be as excited as they were about finding a new king. On the other hand, however, we know from history that King Herod was around 73 years old at the time that Jesus was born. Herod is obviously approaching the end of his life, and Jesus is just beginning his life. So you would think that King Herod would intuitively understand that there's probably not going to be any overlap in their kingships. And maybe that's what the Magi were thinking when they came and sought out King Herod for advice. But as it turns out, King Herod was so fearful of losing his power that he was willing to send orders to his soldiers that every boy under the age of 2 in Bethlehem be killed. What also perplexes me about this story is that the soldiers were willing to carry out this order. I mean, what sort of cowardice, barbaric heathen would carry out such an order? Yet they did. But this is a familiar story. Remember what happened in Exodus chapter 1? Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, every son born to the Hebrews you must throw into the Nile. Pharaoh ordered that all the baby boys be thrown into the Nile and presumably eaten by crocodiles. Remember, Moses was the one who, through God's intervention, led the Israelites out of the bondage of slavery. Moses represents Jesus leading us out of the bondage of sin. So when Moses was born, Satan persuaded the government to kill babies. This was Satan trying to thwart God's plan. His plans were in vain, but that's what he was trying to do. Then, when the Messiah was coming into the world, Satan once again persuaded the government, then King Herod, to kill babies. So where today do we see a government passing laws to kill babies? And why is that happening? Satan, to this day, is attempting to thwart God's plans. In the United States of America today, 1 million babies a year die in abortion. Why? What's going on? Acts 2:17 says, "In the last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams." Did you see that? Sons and daughters will prophesy, and young men will see visions. When God pours out His Spirit in the last days. These are the last days. And so we see Satan doing it again today. When God wants to do a work through someone, Satan comes along and tries to kill them when they're a baby. Verse 13, Joseph was warned in a dream to flee, to get up and get out of here. And Joseph got up in the middle of the night and got his family, and they went all the way to Egypt in order to hide from King Herod. I'm going to do a video on how God speaks to us and the ways in which we can hear from God. So if you want to see that video when it's published, subscribe below and hit the notification bell so that you won't miss it when it comes out. And if you know somebody who's interested in a Bible commentary, send them this link. Click the share button and then the copy button, and then either text or email that link to your friend. Jesus was taken by his parents to Egypt, and sometime later, after Herod dies, they return to Israel, and again, being warned in a dream. Jesus' parents settled in Nazareth, which fulfilled a prophecy that said he will be called a Nazarene. And when Jesus is grown and begins his ministry, Nathanael, one of the 12 disciples, is going to ask, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?"